The silence in the penthouse was deafening. 55 candles flickered on a chocolate birthday cake that nobody would eat, casting dancing shadows across the marble floor. Jonathan Mitchell sat alone in his wheelchair, staring at the cake with hollow eyes. The city lights twinkled 40 floors below, but up here in his glass tower, darkness had already claimed him. 3 years. 3 years since the accident that took his legs and, somehow, his soul. 3 years since he'd celebrated anything, least of all his own birthday. The massive penthouse that once hosted grand parties now felt like a tomb. Empty rooms echoed with memories of laughter that would never return. His phone buzzed with birthday messages from business associates and distant relatives who felt obligated to remember. He didn't bother reading them. What was the point? Their words were as hollow as the life he was living. Money couldn't buy back his mobility, couldn't restore the confidence that had once made him one of the most feared CEOs in the city. The wheelchair had become his prison. Not because he couldn't move, the doctors had done wonders with physical therapy, but because he built walls around his heart higher than his penthouse. He'd pushed away his sister Rebecca when she tried to help. He dismissed his longtime assistant Patricia when her pity became too obvious. One by one he'd driven away anyone who cared, until only the cleaning staff remained, and even they were forbidden from his private floors after 6 p.m. Jonathan reached for the cake knife, his hand trembling slightly. Not from his condition, the accident had left his upper body stronger than ever, but from the weight of his isolation. He'd become everything he once despised, bitter, alone, and forgotten by the world he'd once conquered. The penthouse automation system hummed quietly, adjusting temperature and lighting without his input. Even his home didn't need him anymore. Everything ran on schedules and programs, just like his empty life. Wake up, handle business calls, eat meals prepared by his chef, sleep, repeat. No purpose, no joy, no reason to blow out those 55 candles. He thought about his parents, both gone now, and wondered what they would think of what he'd become. His father had built Mitchell Industries from nothing, teaching Jonathan that strength meant never showing weakness. But what happened when weakness was all you had left? What happened when the strong man crumbled and there was nobody left to catch him? The cake's chocolate frosting had started to harden, the candles burning lower. Soon they would melt into the frosting, ruining even this pathetic attempt at celebration. He should put them out, throw the whole thing away like he'd thrown away every other good thing in his life. But something kept him sitting there, staring at the tiny flames like they might hold answers to questions he was too afraid to ask. Outside his floor-to-ceiling windows, the city continued its rhythm of life. People hurried home to families, couples walked hand in hand, children played in the park across the street. All of it happening without him, all of it reminding him of everything he'd lost. Not just his legs, but his capacity to connect, to love, to be loved in return. The accident had been nobody's fault, a drunk driver running a red light, a split second that changed everything. But Jonathan had made it everyone's fault, lashing out at doctors, nurses, therapists, anyone who tried to help. He'd been so focused on what he'd lost that he'd destroyed what remained. His reflection in the dark window showed a man who'd aged far beyond his 55 years. Gray hair that was once perfectly styled now hung loose around his shoulders. The sharp suits had been replaced by comfortable clothes that made wheelchair transfers easier. Even his posture had changed, shoulders curved inward as if protecting his heart from further damage. The candles flickered lower, wax dripping onto the marble dining table that seated 12 but had been set for one for 3 years running. This would be his legacy: an empty table, an uneaten cake, a life that had stopped when his legs did. He'd built an empire but couldn't build a single meaningful relationship. He'd made billions but couldn't buy back a single moment of happiness. The building's elevator chimed faintly in the distance, but Jonathan ignored it. Probably the security guard doing rounds, or maybe the overnight maintenance crew. His world had shrunk to this penthouse, these rooms that knew all his secrets and kept them locked away from a world that had forgotten Jonathan Mitchell existed. As the last candle burned dangerously low, Jonathan closed his eyes and made a wish he'd never admit to anyone. Not for his legs back, not for his empire to grow larger, but for something he thought he'd lost forever: the chance to matter to someone again. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime on the 52nd floor, and Gabriela Rodriguez stepped out, her 8-year-old daughter Sophia's hand clasped tightly in hers. The cleaning cart rattled slightly as Gabriela pulled it behind her, the sound unnaturally loud in the pristine hallway. "Mommy, why are we up so high?" Sophia whispered, her dark eyes wide as she pressed her face against the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city spread out below them like a carpet of lights, making her gasp with wonder. "Because this is where I work now, mi amor," Gabriela replied softly, checking the work order on her phone. The building manager had been unclear about the exact floors she'd be cleaning, and the paperwork seemed to have some mix-up. But she couldn't afford to ask too many questions. This job paid twice what her previous position had, and with Sophia starting 3rd grade soon, they needed every penny. Gabriella had worked cleaning jobs for 6 years now, ever since Sophia's father had walked out when their daughter was just 2 years old. She'd learned to be invisible, to clean around the wealthy residents of buildings like this without disturbing their perfect lives. Rich people didn't want to be reminded that someone had to scrub their floors and empty their trash. Sophia skipped alongside her mother, her school backpack bouncing with each step. The after-school program had closed early due to a water main break, so Gabriella had no choice but to bring her daughter to work. She'd explained to Sophia that she needed to be very quiet and stay close, that they couldn't disturb the important people who lived up here in the clouds. The hallway was longer than their entire apartment, with only 2 doors, one at each end. Gabriella consulted her phone again. The work order indicated she should start with the east penthouse, but as they approached the massive double doors, something seemed different. Light spilled out from underneath the doors, and through the frosted glass panels she could see movement inside. "Mommy, look." Sophia pointed excitedly at the doors. "Someone's having a party?" Gabriella's heart sank. If someone was home, she couldn't clean tonight. She'd have to come back later, which meant staying up even later and getting less sleep before her morning job at the cafe. But as they got closer, she realized something was wrong with this picture. There was light but no music. No laughter, no voices. Just silence that felt heavy and sad. Sophia pressed her face against the glass panel, her breath fogging up the surface. "Mommy, there's a man in there with a birthday cake. But he looks so sad. Why is he sad on his birthday?" Gabriella gently pulled her daughter away from the door. "Sophia, we can't look into people's homes. It's not polite." But Sophia's innocent question had planted a seed of curiosity in Gabriella's mind. Through the frosted glass, she could make out the silhouette of a man sitting alone at a large table, candles flickering in front of him. The scene looked heartbreaking, a birthday celebration with no celebration. Just loneliness sitting heavy in an expensive room. "Can we knock?" Sophia asked, her hand already reaching for the doorbell. "Maybe he needs friends for his birthday. Abuela always says birthdays are better with friends." "No, Sophia, we can't disturb." But Sophia's small finger had already pressed the doorbell before Gabriella could stop her. The melodic chimes echoed through the penthouse, and Gabriella's cheeks burned with embarrassment. She grabbed Sophia's hand, ready to flee to the elevator, but the sound of a wheelchair rolling across marble floors made her freeze. The doors opened, revealing a man who looked nothing like Gabriella had expected. She'd imagined someone elderly, someone who might need help. Instead, she found herself looking at Jonathan Mitchell, though she didn't know his name yet. His dark hair was streaked with silver, his green eyes sharp but tired. He wore a simple gray sweater and dark pants, sitting in a sleek black wheelchair that probably cost more than her car. "I'm so sorry," Gabriella began, her cheeks flushing red. "My daughter pressed the doorbell before I could stop her. We didn't mean to disturb you. I'm the new cleaning person, and there seems to be some confusion about. Are you having a birthday party?" Sophia interrupted, stepping forward with the fearless curiosity of a child. "I saw your cake through the window. It looks really pretty." Jonathan stared at the little girl, his mouth slightly open. He'd been prepared for many things: angry neighbors, building management, maybe even emergency services if someone had called about his isolation. But he hadn't been prepared for a child with bright, curious eyes and a smile that seemed to light up the entire hallway. "Sophia, please don't bother the gentleman," Gabriella said, tugging gently on her daughter's hand. "I'm truly sorry, sir. We'll just go to another floor and—" "You can see the cake?" Jonathan found himself asking, his voice rougher than he'd intended. He hadn't spoken to anyone in person for over a week, and his vocal cords seemed to have forgotten how to work properly. Sophia nodded enthusiastically. "It has so many candles. Are you really that old? You don't look as old as my teacher, and she's only 32. Despite everything, Jonathan felt something that might have been a smile trying to form on his lips. When was the last time someone had spoken to him so directly, without pity or awkwardness? "I'm 55 today." "Wow." Sophia's eyes grew even wider. "That's really old. But also really cool because that means you know lots of things. Are you celebrating by yourself? That seems lonely." "Sophia." Gabriella's voice carried a note of panic. "You can't ask people personal questions like that." But Jonathan was still staring at the little girl, something shifting inside his chest that he couldn't quite name. "It's all right," he said quietly. "She's not wrong. It is lonely. The honesty in his voice made Gabriella look at him more carefully. Beneath the expensive clothes and the perfectly appointed penthouse behind him, she saw something she recognized: the same loneliness that kept her awake at night after Sophia went to bed, the same ache of facing life's celebrations alone. Well, if you're lonely, Sophia said matter-of-factly, maybe we could join you? Mommy brought her work dinner and I have crackers in my backpack. We could share your birthday. The suggestion hung in the air like a bridge between two different worlds. Jonathan looked from the little girl to her mother, seeing embarrassment and kindness in equal measure in Gabriella's dark eyes. He thought about the empty penthouse behind him, the untouched cake, the wish he'd made just minutes before. For 3 years, he'd said no to every invitation, every attempt at connection. He'd built his walls so high that even he'd forgotten what the view looked like from the other side. But something about this child's innocent offer, something about her mother's gentle presence, made those walls feel suddenly fragile. Jonathan started, then stopped. The automatic no died on his lips. I have too much cake for one person. Sophia clapped her hands together. That's perfect. Mommy says sharing makes everything better. Gabriella looked uncertain, her employee training warring with her natural compassion. Sir, I don't think. Please, Jonathan said quietly, and the word surprised him as much as it surprised them. If you don't mind dining with someone in a wheelchair. Why would we mind? Sophia asked, genuinely confused. You're still a person. You're just sitting down. And with that simple statement, Sophia Rodriguez became the first person in 3 years to see Jonathan Mitchell as something other than his disability. The first person to look at him and see possibility instead of limitation. Okay, Gabriella said softly, making a decision that would change all of their lives. But just for a few minutes? I still have work to do. As Jonathan wheeled backwards to let them in, he felt something he'd forgotten existed: anticipation. For the first time in 3 years, he was curious about what would happen next. The penthouse that had felt like a tomb just minutes ago suddenly pulsed with life. Sophia's excited chatter filled the cavernous space as she took in the marble floors, the crystal chandeliers, and the wall of windows that made it feel like they were floating above the city. This is like a castle in the sky, Sophia announced, spinning in a circle with her arms outstretched. Do you really live here all by yourself? It's so big. I bet you could roller skate from one end to the other. Jonathan found himself watching the little girl's wonder with fascination. When had he stopped noticing the beauty of his own home? When had luxury become just another form of emptiness? Through Sophia's eyes, he was seeing his penthouse for the first time in years. I hadn't thought of roller skating, he admitted, wheeling toward the dining area where his lonely cake still waited. But you're probably right. Gabriella followed behind, taking in the opulence with quiet amazement. The penthouse was bigger than every apartment she'd ever lived in combined. Original artwork covered the walls, and she was pretty sure that vase on the side table cost more than her annual rent. Yet for all its grandeur, the space felt cold, unlived in. Sir, I should mention I'm Gabriella Rodriguez, and this is my daughter Sophia, she said, setting down her small cooler bag. I really appreciate you letting us intrude on your birthday. Jonathan Mitchell, he replied, then paused. It's been a long time since I've had company for dinner. I'm not sure I remember how to be a proper host. Sophia had wandered over to examine the birthday cake, her face serious with concentration. 55 candles is a lot. Do you make 55 wishes or just one really big one? What do you think? Jonathan asked, genuinely curious about her answer. Well, Sophia said, tapping her finger against her lip, I think you probably need one really big wish because you're a grown-up, and grown-up problems are bigger than kid problems. But maybe you could make smaller wishes for each candle? Like one wish for happiness, one wish for good health, one wish for ice cream. Ice cream is important, Jonathan agreed solemnly. Very important, Sophia nodded. Mommy says ice cream makes everything better except when you're sick. Then you have to have soup. Gabriella felt her cheeks warm. Sophia, please don't talk Mr. Mitchell's ear off. I'm sure he has important things to do. But Jonathan shook his head. Actually, I don't. This is the first interesting conversation I've had in months. He looked at Sophia. What other things make life better? Sophia brightened at being asked her opinion. Oh, lots of things. Hugs from people you love. Finding a really good book. When it rains but you're inside where it's warm. Drawing pictures. Helping someone who's sad. She paused, studying Jonathan's face. Are you sad? The question hit Jonathan like a physical blow. Adults had been asking him variations of this for 3 years. How are you feeling? Are you adjusting well? Do you need anything? But they all expected certain answers, professional responses that kept the conversation comfortable. Sophia asked with genuine concern and genuine curiosity, expecting nothing but honesty. "Yes," Jonathan said quietly. "I am sad." "Why?" Sophia asked, settling into the chair next to his wheelchair without any self-consciousness. Gabriella moved to intercept. "Sophia, that's too personal." "It's okay," Jonathan said, surprising himself again. "I'm sad because I had an accident that hurt my legs, and after that happened I pushed all my friends and family away. Now I'm alone and I forgot how to let people care about me." Sophia nodded as if this made perfect sense. "Oh, well, that's fixable." Jonathan blinked. "It is?" "Sure. You just start letting people care about you again. Like right now you're letting me and Mommy care about you by sharing your birthday cake. That's a good start." The simplicity of her logic was both heartbreaking and hopeful. Jonathan looked at Gabriella, who was watching the interaction with soft eyes. "Is it really that simple?" "Children see things differently than we do," Gabriella said gently. "Sometimes they see more clearly." Jonathan nodded toward the cake. "Would you help me cut this? I'm afraid I'll make a mess of it, and Sophia deserves a proper birthday cake slice." As Gabriella moved to help, Sophia continued her chatter. "Mr. Jonathan, why do you have such a big house if you live alone? Don't you get lonely in all these rooms?" "Very lonely," Jonathan admitted. "I bought this place when I thought I'd fill it with a family someday. That never happened." "Well, you could get a family," Sophia said practically. "Mommy says families come in all different shapes. Some families are just a mom and a little girl like us. Some families are friends who choose to love each other." Gabriella paused in cutting the cake. "Sophia, honey, not everyone wants." "I would like a family," Jonathan said quietly. "I just don't know how to start." Sophia beamed. "That's easy. You start by being nice to people and caring about them. Like you're being nice to us right now." As they settled around the table with generous slices of chocolate cake, Jonathan realized something profound was happening. For the first time in 3 years he wasn't thinking about his wheelchair, his limitations, or his loneliness. He was thinking about Sophia's laugh, about the way Gabriella's eyes crinkled when she smiled, about how right it felt to have voices in his home again. "This cake is really good," Sophia announced, chocolate frosting dotting her cheeks. "Did you make it?" "My chef made it," Jonathan replied. "You have a chef?" Sophia's eyes went wide. "That's so cool. Does he make whatever you want?" "Pretty much." "Can he make mac and cheese?" "The really good kind with the crispy cheese on top." Jonathan actually smiled for the first time in months. "I'll ask him." As they ate, Sophia peppered Jonathan with questions about his life, his home, his wheelchair. Her curiosity was never intrusive, just honest and accepting. She asked how fast the wheelchair could go if it was hard to reach things up high, and whether he ever raced other people in wheelchairs. "I've never raced anyone," Jonathan admitted. "That's too bad," Sophia said. "I bet you'd win. You look fast." Gabriella watched this exchange with growing amazement. Her daughter had accomplished in 30 minutes what therapists, family members, and business associates had failed to do in 3 years. She'd made Jonathan Mitchell smile. Really, genuinely smile. "Mr. Jonathan," Sophia said as she finished her cake, "do you know any birthday songs? Mommy and I know 3 different ones." "I don't think I remember any birthday songs." "That's okay. We can teach you." Sophia jumped up from her chair. "Mommy, should we sing the Spanish one or the English one first?" "Sophia, I think we should probably let Mr. Mitchell finish his cake in peace." "Please," Jonathan said, and there was something almost desperate in his voice. "I'd like to learn some birthday songs." So Gabriella and Sophia taught Jonathan 3 different birthday songs, in 2 different languages with hand motions and made-up verses. The penthouse filled with laughter and music for the first time in years. Jonathan found himself clapping along, then singing, then laughing so hard his sides hurt. When it came time to blow out the candles, Sophia insisted they all make a wish together. "On the count of 3, she instructed. 1, 2, 3. They blew out the 55 candles together, and in that moment Jonathan's wish from earlier seemed to be coming true already. He mattered to someone again. 2 someones actually. As the last candle flickered out, Sophia clapped her hands. "What did you wish for, Mr. Jonathan?" "If I tell you it won't come true," he said with a smile. "That's okay," Sophia said, settling back in her chair. "I think I know what you wished for anyway." "You do?" She nodded sagely. "You wished not to be sad anymore." Jonathan felt tears prick at his eyes. "Something like that, yes." "Good," Sophia said with satisfaction. That's a really good wish. As the evening wound down and Gabriella began to gather their things, Jonathan felt panic rising in his chest. They were going to leave, and he'd be alone again with his empty penthouse and his silence. But something had changed in him tonight, something fundamental. Gabriella, he said as she stood to go, what kind of work were you supposed to do tonight? Cleaning services, she replied. But obviously with you here I can't. What if I hired you directly? The words tumbled out before he could stop them. I mean, not just for cleaning. I could use help with things around here. Organization, maybe some cooking assistance. The pay would be better than a cleaning service. Gabriella stared at him. Mr. Mitchell, I couldn't possibly. Please consider it, Jonathan said. And Sophia would be welcome here after school if that would help with childcare. Sophia bounced on her toes. Could I really come back here, Mr. Jonathan? We could have dinner together and I could help you remember how to be happy. Gabriella looked between her excited daughter and Jonathan's hopeful face. She saw something in his eyes that she recognized, the same desperate loneliness she felt every night, the same hunger for connection that kept them both awake. We'll try it, she said softly. If you're sure. I'm sure, Jonathan said, and for the first time in 3 years he meant it. As they prepared to leave, Sophia ran back to give Jonathan a hug. He froze for a moment, and used to physical affection, then wrapped his arms around the little girl who had changed his world in one evening. Thank you for the best birthday I've had in years, he whispered. Thank you for sharing your cake, Sophia whispered back. Tomorrow we'll start working on making you happy all the time, okay? Jonathan nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. After they left, Jonathan sat in his penthouse, looking at the empty cake plate and listening to the echo of laughter still hanging in the air. For the first time in 3 years, silence didn't feel like death. It felt like possibility. Monday morning arrived with unprecedented energy in the Mitchell penthouse. Jonathan had been awake since 5 a.m., not from insomnia this time, but from anticipation. He'd spent the weekend thinking about Gabriella and Sophia, replaying every moment of Friday evening and wondering if he'd dreamed the whole thing. His assistant Patricia, whom he'd barely spoken to in months, seemed shocked when he called her early Monday morning with a list of instructions. Arrange for the best private elementary school in the city to have an opening for Sofia Rodriguez. Set up a proper office space in the penthouse for Gabriella. Find the best educational tutors available. And clear his afternoon schedule. He had important meetings. Sir, Patricia said carefully, are you feeling all right? You haven't asked me to arrange anything personal in years. I'm feeling better than I have in years, Jonathan replied and realized it was true. When Gabriella and Sophia arrived that afternoon, Sophia immediately ran to Jonathan with a picture she'd drawn at school. Look, Mr. Jonathan. I drew you at your birthday party. She held up a colorful drawing showing 3 stick figures around a table with what appeared to be a very tall cake. In the picture, all 3 figures were smiling and notably, Jonathan was standing up. Jonathan studied the drawing carefully, touched by the way Sophia saw him. This is beautiful, Sophia. May I keep it? Of course. I made it for you. Sophia beamed. Mommy, show him the cookies we made. Gabriella set a container on the counter, looking slightly embarrassed. We made chocolate chip cookies. Sophia insisted you'd want some. I love chocolate chip cookies, Jonathan said, though he couldn't remember the last time he'd eaten any. But before we have cookies, I have some news to share. He wheeled over to his desk and picked up several papers. Gabriella, I've arranged for a position for you here. Not just helping around the penthouse, I'd like you to be my personal assistant. The salary is... He named a figure that made Gabriella's eyes widen. Mr. Mitchell, I can't possibly. And Sophia, Jonathan continued, turning to the little girl, how would you feel about going to a new school? One with smaller classes and really good art programs. Sophia looked between her mother and Jonathan. Would I still get to come here after school? Every day, Jonathan promised. This would be your home away from home. Gabriella shook her head, overwhelmed. This is too much. You barely know us. I know enough, Jonathan said firmly. I know you're kind, hardworking, and raising an incredible daughter. I know you've struggled to make ends meet while trying to give Sophia the best life possible. And I know that meeting you two has changed something fundamental in me. Sophia tugged on her mother's sleeve. Mommy, say yes, please. Mr. Jonathan needs us and we need him too. Gabriella looked at her daughter's hopeful face, then at Jonathan's earnest expression. She thought about the stack of bills on her kitchen table, the worry that kept her awake at night, the dream she'd put aside to focus on survival. Why? She asked quietly. Why would you do this for us? Jonathan was quiet for a long moment. Because for 3 years I felt useless. I built a company, made money, but I couldn't see the point of any of it. Friday night, watching Sophia's joy, seeing your kindness, I remembered what it feels like to matter. You gave me purpose again. You gave us hope again, Gabriella said softly. So we all helped each other, Sophia said matter-of-factly. That's what families do. The word family hung in the air between them, full of possibility and promise. Okay, Gabriella said finally. We'll accept your generous offer. But I want to work for it, really work. I don't want charity. You'll work harder than you've ever worked in your life, Jonathan promised with a smile. I'm not an easy boss. Yes, you are, Sophia contradicted. You're nice. Mean bosses don't share birthday cake. Over the following days, their new routine took shape. Gabriella arrived each morning after dropping Sophia at her new school, bringing coffee and an energy that the penthouse had been missing for years. She organized Jonathan's chaotic personal files, scheduled his medical appointments, and gradually took over the household management he'd been neglecting. But more than the practical help, Gabriella brought perspective. When Jonathan grew frustrated with a business call, she'd remind him of the big picture. When he started retreating into his old patterns of isolation, she'd gently pull him back into engagement with the world. You're transforming this place, Jonathan told her one afternoon as she arranged fresh flowers in the living room. I'm not doing anything special, Gabriella replied. Just making it feel lived in again. That's everything, Jonathan said quietly. When Sophia arrived after school each day, the penthouse came alive in a different way. She'd set up her homework at the dining table and chatter about her day while Jonathan helped her with math problems. Her new school was challenging, but she was thriving in the smaller classes and individual attention. Mr. Jonathan, do you know about fractions? Sophia asked one afternoon, frowning at her worksheet. I do. What's troubling you? Well, if I have 3/4 of a cookie and you have 1/4 of a cookie, we have a whole cookie together, right? That's right. Sophia looked up at him with serious eyes. Is that what we are? Like fractions that make a whole when we're together? Jonathan felt his breath catch. What do you mean? Well, you were missing some parts that made you happy, and Mommy and I were missing some parts that made us feel safe. But when we're all together, we're complete. Like a whole cookie. Gabriella looked up from where she was preparing dinner in Jonathan's state-of-the-art kitchen that he'd barely used in years. Sophia, that's very profound. What's profound mean? Sophia asked. It means you said something very wise and true, Jonathan explained. And yes, I think you're right. I think we do make each other whole. As the weeks passed, Jonathan found himself looking forward to each day in ways he'd forgotten were possible. He started taking better care of himself, showering and dressing properly instead of staying in comfortable clothes all day. He began leaving the penthouse for Sophia's school events and Gabriella's parent-teacher conferences, rediscovering the world outside his glass tower. The three of them established traditions. Friday nights became game night, with Sophia teaching Jonathan card games and board games he'd never learned as a child. Saturday mornings meant pancakes made from scratch, with Sophia standing on a step stool to help flip them while Jonathan supervised from his wheelchair and Gabriella laughed at their flour-covered faces. Sunday afternoons were for exploring the city. Jonathan had a specially equipped van that he'd barely used, but now they drove to museums, parks, and restaurants. Sophia would push his wheelchair sometimes, pretending to be his chauffeur and making him laugh with her serious commentary about traffic and weather. You know what's amazing? Gabriella said one Sunday as they watched Sophia feed ducks at the pond in Central Park. What's that? Jonathan asked, following her gaze to where Sophia was giggling at a particularly bold duck that kept demanding more breadcrumbs. 3 months ago, I was working 3 jobs just to keep our heads above water. Sophia was in after-school care with kids who didn't appreciate her imagination. We were surviving, but we weren't really living. And now? Jonathan prompted. Now Sophia has a father figure who helps her with homework and listens to her dreams about becoming an artist. I have meaningful work that uses my organizational skills instead of just my ability to scrub floors. We have security, but more than that, we have joy. Jonathan reached over and took her hand. You gave me joy first. I was just existing in that penthouse, counting down days until I died. You and Sophia reminded me that life is meant to be lived, not endured. We all saved each other, Gabriella said softly, squeezing his hand. That night, after Sophia had fallen asleep in the guest room that had become hers, Jonathan had redecorated it with her input, filling it with art supplies and books and the softest bedding money could buy, Jonathan found himself in his home office, staring at legal documents he'd been avoiding for weeks. His will. His estate planning. Documents that had once seemed urgent when he thought he had nothing to live for. Now they felt different. Now he had people who depended on him, people he wanted to protect and provide for. He was still working when Gabriella found him around midnight, having finished her evening routine of preparing Sophia's school clothes and packing her lunch. "You're up late," she said, settling into the chair across from his desk. "Just thinking about the future," Jonathan replied. "Making sure certain things are in order." "Jonathan," Gabriella said carefully, you're not sick, are you? All this generosity changing your will." "No," Jonathan said quickly. "No, I'm healthier than I've been in years. I'm planning for a long, happy life. But I want to make sure that if something happens to me, you and Sophia are taken care of. Protected. You don't owe us anything." "I owe you everything," Jonathan interrupted. "But this isn't about debt. This is about love. You're my family now, even if it's not official. I want you to be secure." Gabriella felt tears prick her eyes. "Family," she repeated softly. "If that's okay with you," Jonathan said, suddenly uncertain. "I know we haven't known each other long, and I know my situation is complicated." "Jonathan," Gabriella interrupted, reaching across the desk to take his hand. "Sophia was right that first night. You're not complicated. You're just a good man who forgot how to let people love him. We're honored to be your family." As they sat together in the quiet office, both of them felt the shift that had been building for weeks finally settle into place. They weren't just employer and employee anymore, weren't just housemates or friends. They were something deeper, something that didn't have easy labels but felt as natural as breathing. "There's something else," Jonathan said, his voice slightly nervous. "I've been thinking about Sophia's future. Her education, her dreams. I'd like to set up a trust fund for her. For college, art school, whatever she wants to pursue. Jonathan, you've already done so much." "I want to adopt her," Jonathan blurted out, the words he'd been carrying for weeks finally finding their way into the world. "Legally. I want to be her father, not just her friend who helps with homework. I want to be the man who walks her down the aisle someday, who teaches her to drive, who threatens her first boyfriend with appropriate parental intimidation." Gabriella stared at him, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. "I know it's presumptuous," Jonathan continued quickly. "I know I should have discussed it with you first. But Gabriella, I love that little girl like she's already mine. She calls me family, she trusts me with her fears and dreams, and I want to make it official. I want to protect her and provide for her and be the father she deserves." "She would be over the moon," Gabriella whispered. "She's been drawing pictures of our family for weeks now. Always the three of us, always together. And you? How would you feel about it?" Gabriella stood up and walked around the desk, stopping in front of Jonathan's wheelchair. "I would feel grateful every day of my life that my daughter has a father who loves her as much as you do." Jonathan reached up to cup her face gently, wiping away her tears with his thumbs. "We're really doing this, aren't we? Building a family from 3 broken pieces?" "We're not broken anymore," Gabriella said firmly. "We're just different shapes that fit together perfectly." In that moment, sitting in the office that had once been Jonathan's refuge from the world, they both realized that refuge had transformed into something far more valuable, a launching pad for the life they were building together, one day at a time, one small act of love at a time. Spring arrived in New York with unusual warmth, and with it came changes that seemed to bloom as naturally as the flowers in Central Park. Sophia had been at her new school for 2 months now, and her confidence was growing daily. She'd made friends with children who appreciated her creativity and imagination, and her teachers regularly sent home notes praising her artistic talents and academic progress. "Mr. Jonathan, look what I made in art class," Sophia announced, bursting through the penthouse doors with her usual after-school energy. She held up a clay sculpture that vaguely resembled a family of 3 figures sitting around a table. Jonathan wheeled over to examine her artwork with the serious attention he'd once reserved for million-dollar business deals. "Sophia, this is remarkable. Tell me about each figure." "That's you," Sophia pointed to the tallest figure. "And that's Mommy and that's me. We're having dinner together, but see? You're not in your wheelchair in this one because in my art, you can do anything." The simple statement hit Jonathan with unexpected force. In Sophia's imagination, his limitations simply didn't exist. She saw him as capable, strong, unlimited. It was a gift he was still learning to accept. "I see that," Jonathan said softly. "Where should we put this masterpiece?" "On the kitchen counter where we eat breakfast. So we can see it every morning and remember that we're a family." Gabriella emerged from the home office where she'd been organizing Jonathan's business correspondence. Over the past few weeks, she'd proven invaluable not just in managing his household, but in helping him reconnect with the business world he'd been neglecting. She'd streamlined his systems, scheduled meetings he'd been avoiding, and somehow made the overwhelming pile of decisions feel manageable again. "How was school today, mi amor?" Gabriella asked, kissing the top of Sophia's head. "Really good. Mrs. Patterson says I'm ready for the advanced reading group, and in art class we're starting a project about families. I told everyone about Mr. Jonathan and how he's teaching me about fractions and business and how to make really good pancakes." Jonathan smiled. "Speaking of business, I have some news to share with both of you." Gabriella looked concerned. "Is everything all right?" "Better than all right," Jonathan assured her. "I had a call today from the Children's Art Foundation. They want to fund a program bringing art education to underprivileged schools. It was Sophia's drawings that gave me the idea to get involved with children's charities again." Sophia's eyes went wide. "You mean I helped with your work?" "You helped me remember what's important," Jonathan said. "Making money is easy when you have money. Making a difference is what matters." As they prepared dinner together, Gabriella cooking, Jonathan handling ingredients from his seated position, and Sophia setting the table with elaborate place settings that changed daily according to her artistic vision, Jonathan marveled at how natural this felt. How had he lived for 55 years without knowing that this was what home was supposed to feel like? "Mr. Jonathan," Sophia said as they sat down to eat, "can I ask you something kind of serious?" "Of course, sweetheart. What's on your mind?" Sophia took a deep breath as if gathering courage. "Do you ever get sad about your legs not working?" Gabriella started to intervene. "Sophia, honey. It's okay," Jonathan said gently. "That's a fair question, Sophia. The honest answer is yes, sometimes I do get sad about it. I miss being able to walk upstairs or dance or run in the park." Sophia nodded solemnly. "But do you know what I think?" "What do you think?" "I think maybe your accident happened so you could meet us. Because if your legs worked, you might have been at some fancy party on your birthday instead of sitting alone with cake. And then we never would have found you." The logic was distinctly 8-year-old, but it carried a truth that made Jonathan's chest tighten with emotion. "You know what, Sophia? I think you might be right. Besides," Sophia added, warming to her theme, "there are lots of cool things about wheelchairs. You never get tired walking, you can carry more stuff in your lap, and you're always the right height for me to hug you without you having to bend down." Jonathan laughed, the sound rich and genuine. "I never thought of those advantages." "That's because grown-ups forget to look for good things sometimes," Sophia said matter-of-factly. "Kids are better at finding the good stuff." After dinner, they settled into their evening routine. Sophia spread her homework across the coffee table while Jonathan helped her with math problems and Gabriella reviewed business correspondence. The penthouse that had once echoed with emptiness now hummed with the comfortable sounds of a family, pages turning, pencils scratching, quiet conversations. "Mr. Jonathan," Sophia said, looking up from her worksheet, "what was your family like when you were little?" Jonathan set down the papers he'd been reviewing. "My family was different from this. My father worked all the time and my mother was very focused on social appearances. They loved me but they weren't very good at showing it." "That sounds lonely," Sophia said with 8-year-old directness. "It was lonely," Jonathan agreed. "I think that's why being with you and your mother feels so special to me. You show love every day in little ways and big ways." Sophia abandoned her homework and climbed onto the couch next to Jonathan's wheelchair. "Can I tell you a secret?" "I'd be honored to hear your secret." Sophia cupped her hands around her mouth and whispered conspiratorially, "I've been pretending you're my real daddy at school. Is that okay?" Jonathan felt his breath catch. "What do you mean?" "Well, when kids talk about their dads, I talk about you. I tell them about how you help me with homework and take us to fancy restaurants and know everything about business. I tell them you're the smartest, nicest daddy in the world." Tears pricked Jonathan's eyes. "Sophia, I would be proud to be your daddy. More proud than you could possibly know." "Really? Even though I'm not really yours?" "You are really mine," Jonathan said firmly. "Family isn't just about sharing blood. It's about sharing love and taking care of each other and choosing to be together every day. You're as much mine as if I'd been there the day you were born." Sophia threw her arms around his neck, and Jonathan held her tight, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo and feeling more complete than he ever had in his life. From the kitchen, Gabriella watched this interaction with tears in her own eyes. She'd been a single mother for so long, carrying every burden and every joy alone. Watching Jonathan with Sophia, seeing the pure love between them, she felt something shift in her heart. Not just gratitude for his help, but something deeper and more complex. "Mommy," Sophia called out, "come here. We're having a family hug." Gabriella joined them on the couch, and for a moment they sat together in perfect contentment, three people who'd found each other against all odds, who'd healed each other's wounds simply by being present and open to love. "You know what we need?" Sophia announced after the hug ended. "What's that, sweetheart?" Gabriella asked. "A family picture. A real one, not just my drawings. We need a picture to put on Mr. Jonathan's desk so when he's working, he can remember that he's not alone anymore." Jonathan and Gabriella exchanged glances over Sophia's head. In that look was recognition of how far they'd all traveled from that first night when a lonely man shared his birthday cake with strangers. They weren't strangers anymore. They weren't even friends anymore. They were family, chosen and cherished and real. "I think a family picture is a wonderful idea," Jonathan said. "We'll have professional portraits taken this weekend." "With fancy clothes?" Sophia asked excitedly. "With whatever clothes make you happy," Jonathan replied. "Because the most important thing in any picture is that the love shows through." As they settled back into homework and business papers, the penthouse felt transformed once again. Not just by the presence of voices and laughter, but by the presence of belonging. They all belonged here, together, building something beautiful from the pieces of their separate lives. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city sparkled with evening lights, but inside, three hearts had found their way home. The first warm Saturday in April found them at the botanical garden, Sophia running ahead on the winding paths while Jonathan and Gabriella followed at a more leisurely pace. His wheelchair handled the paved walkways easily, and Gabriella walked beside him, pointing out the early spring flowers that Sophia kept stopping to examine. "She has such curiosity about everything," Gabriella observed, watching her daughter kneel beside a patch of daffodils to study them intently. "She gets that from you," Jonathan replied. "The way you approach problems at work, the questions you ask." Sophia learned that intellectual fearlessness from watching you. Gabriella felt herself blush at the compliment. "You give me too much credit." "I don't give you nearly enough credit," Jonathan said quietly. They'd reached a secluded area of the garden where benches surrounded a small pond. Sophia was captivated by the fish swimming lazily in the warm afternoon sun, so Gabriella sat on a bench while Jonathan positioned his wheelchair beside her. "Can I ask you something personal?" Gabriella said after a few minutes of comfortable silence. "You can ask me anything. What happened to you after the accident? I mean, I know you pushed people away, but what was it really like?" Jonathan was quiet for so long that Gabriella wondered if she'd overstepped. But when he spoke, his voice was thoughtful rather than pained. "I was driving home from a business dinner. Late, maybe 10:30 at night. I'd closed a deal that day that would make the company another $50 million, and I was feeling pretty good about myself." He paused, watching Sophia's fascination with the fish. "The drunk driver ran the red light going about 60 miles per hour. Hit my car on the driver's side." Gabriella reached over and took his hand. "I was conscious through most of it," Jonathan continued. "The paramedics, the hospital, the surgery. I kept thinking it was temporary, that the doctors would fix everything and I'd go back to my life. When they told me the spinal cord damage was permanent, I couldn't process it. That must have been terrifying. It was rage mostly. I was angry at the drunk driver, angry at the doctors for not being able to fix me, angry at my friends and family for looking at me with pity. I was angry at God, at the universe, at myself." Sophia had discovered a family of ducks and was trying to coax them closer with pieces of the crackers they'd brought for lunch. Her laughter carried across the water, light and joyful. "The rehabilitation was the worst part," Jonathan said. "Not the physical therapy that was actually helpful, but the counseling, the support groups, the well-meaning visitors who wanted to inspire me with stories of other people who'd overcome their disabilities. I felt like everyone wanted me to be grateful for being alive, but I couldn't find anything to be grateful for." "What changed?" Gabriella asked softly. Jonathan smiled, still watching Sophia. "A little girl asked if she could join my birthday party." "Jonathan." "No, I'm serious. That night, Sophia didn't see a disabled man feeling sorry for himself. She saw someone having a birthday who looked lonely. She didn't want to fix me or inspire me or counsel me. She just wanted to share cake and sing songs and make a sad person less sad." Gabriella felt tears gathering in her eyes. "She has that effect on people." "You both do," Jonathan said, turning to look at her directly. "You know what I realized that night? I'd been so focused on what I'd lost that I'd forgotten to notice what was still possible. I could still think, still feel, still connect with people. I could still matter. You matter so much to us, Gabriella whispered. You saved my life, Gabriella. Both of you. Not in some dramatic movie scene way, but in the most important way possible. You reminded me that life is worth living. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, hands still intertwined, watching Sophia's animated conversation with the ducks. Can I tell you something now? Gabriella asked. Of course. When Sophia's father left, I thought it was because I wasn't enough. Not pretty enough, not interesting enough, not worth staying for. I spent years thinking that if I could just be better somehow, I could make someone love us enough to stay. Jonathan squeezed her hand gently. I worked 3 jobs not just because we needed the money, but because I thought if I could just achieve enough, prove myself enough, maybe someone would see our value. I was so tired, Jonathan. Tired of trying to be perfect, tired of carrying everything alone, tired of watching Sophia grow up without a father figure. You were carrying an impossible load, Jonathan said. What you accomplished as a single mother is extraordinary. I don't feel extraordinary. Most days I felt like I was failing at everything that mattered. Gabriella, look at your daughter. Look at the confident, kind, creative person you raised all by yourself. Look at how she treats people, how she sees the world, how she loves without reservation. That's not failure, that's the greatest success imaginable. Gabriella wiped at her eyes with her free hand. When we met you, when I saw how Sophia brought light back into your life, I realized something. We weren't too little or not enough. We were exactly what you needed, just like you were exactly what we needed. We complete each other, Jonathan said. Like Sophia said with her fraction analogy. Exactly. Gabriella turned to face him more fully. Jonathan, I need you to know something. What we have, this family we've built, it's not charity or convenience or even just friendship. I love you. Not because you've been generous to us, not because you've solved our problems, but because of who you are. Because you helped Sophia with homework with the same intensity you once brought to million-dollar deals. Because you listened to her stories about school like they're the most important things in the world. Because you've let us see your heart, even when it was broken. Jonathan felt his breath catch. Gabriella. I love how patient you are when Sophia asks you the same question 5 different ways. I love how you've learned to make pancakes because it makes her happy. I love how you push yourself to do things that scare you because you don't want to limit our experiences. I love your strength, your intelligence, your capacity for growth, and your willingness to let a little girl and her mother change your entire world. Jonathan reached up with his free hand to cup her cheek. I love you too. I love your strength, your fierce protectiveness of Sophia, your ability to see solutions where I see only problems. I love how you hum while you work, how you make every room brighter just by being in it, how you've taught me that home isn't a place, it's people who choose to love each other every day. They leaned closer to each other, and their first kiss was soft, tentative, full of promise and hope and the recognition that they'd found something neither had been looking for but both desperately needed. Mommy? Mr. Jonathan. Come see. Sophia's voice broke through the moment, and they separated with smiles, both feeling like teenagers caught by a parent. We should probably continue this conversation later, Gabriella said, her cheeks pink. Definitely, Jonathan agreed. But Gabriella? I meant every word. As they made their way over to where Sophia was excitedly pointing out a turtle she'd spotted in the pond, both Gabriella and Jonathan felt the last pieces of their guarded hearts clicking into place. They weren't just building a family for Sophia's sake anymore. They were building it for themselves, for the future they could now imagine together, for the love they'd found in the most unexpected place. Sophia looked up at them with a knowing smile. You guys look happy. Really, really happy. We are happy, sweetheart, Jonathan said. Happier than we've ever been. Good, Sophia said with satisfaction. I told the ducks that my family was the best family in the whole world. I'm glad you guys finally figured that out too. As they walked back through the garden toward home, the afternoon sun casting long shadows on the path, 3 hearts beat in perfect rhythm, finally understanding that sometimes the most beautiful things in life come from the most unexpected moments of kindness. Summer had settled over New York with gentle warmth, and with it came a new rhythm to their lives. Sophia was attending a day camp that focused on arts and creative writing, which meant Gabriella and Jonathan had their mornings alone together for the first time since they'd become a family. These quiet hours had become precious to both of them. They would sit on the penthouse terrace with coffee and fruit, discussing Jonathan's business decisions, planning Sophia's upcoming school year, and slowly, carefully, exploring the growing attraction between them. The Henderson account is asking for another meeting, Gabriella said, reviewing Jonathan's schedule on her tablet. I think they're hoping you'll lower your consulting fee. What do you think? Jonathan asked. He'd learned to value her insights on business matters. Her perspective, unclouded by years in corporate environments, often cut straight to the heart of issues he'd been overcomplicating. "I think they need you more than you need them," Gabriella replied. "Your reputation for turning around struggling companies is what brought them to you. Don't undervalue your expertise." Jonathan smiled. "6 months ago, I was barely functioning as a businessman. Now I'm taking on consulting projects because my very smart assistant reminds me that I have valuable skills to offer." "You always had valuable skills," Gabriella said softly. "You just forgot how to see them." The way she looked at him when she said things like that made Jonathan's pulse quicken. There was admiration in her eyes, but also something warmer, something that had been building between them since that first kiss in the botanical garden 2 months ago. They'd been careful, taking things slowly for Sophia's sake and their own. Neither wanted to rush into something that might disrupt the beautiful balance they'd found. But the attraction was becoming harder to ignore, the longing glances and accidental touches building into something that hummed between them constantly. "Gabriella," Jonathan said, setting down his coffee cup. "Can we talk about something that's not business-related?" "Of course. What's on your mind?" Jonathan wheeled his chair closer to where she sat on the cushioned terrace furniture. "What's happening between us?" Gabriella's cheeks flushed slightly, but she met his gaze directly. "What about it?" "I'm falling in love with you," Jonathan said simply. "Not just grateful love or family love, but romantic, I want to spend my life with you love. And I hope, you might be feeling something similar." Gabriella set aside her tablet and reached for his hands. "Jonathan, I've been in love with you for weeks. But I wasn't sure if you were ready for that, or if I should be feeling this way." "Why wouldn't you be ready to feel this way?" "Because 6 months ago you were in a very dark place. I didn't want to take advantage of your gratitude, or mistake your appreciation for something deeper." Jonathan brought her hands to his lips, pressing gentle kisses to her knuckles. "Gabriella, what I feel for you has nothing to do with gratitude. It has to do with the way you laugh at Sophia's silly jokes. It has to do with how you reorganized my entire home office in a way that actually makes sense. It has to do with the way you hum while you cook dinner and how you always remember that I like my coffee with just a touch of cream." Gabriella felt her heart racing. "Jonathan, I love how you're not impressed by my money, but you are impressed when I remember to call the school about Sophia's field trip permission slip. I love how you challenge my business decisions when you think I'm wrong, and how you support my ideas when you think they're right. I love how you've never once looked at my wheelchair like it was something to pity or overcome, you just see it as part of who I am. Because that's exactly what it is," Gabriella said firmly. "Part of who you are, not the definition of who you are." "See? That's what I mean." Jonathan smiled. "I love how you understand things that took me years to figure out." Gabriella stood up from her chair and moved to perch on the wide arm of Jonathan's wheelchair, close enough that she could run her fingers through his hair. "I love you too," she said softly. "I love how patient you are with Sophia's questions, even when she asks the same thing 10 times in different ways. I love how you've learned to make pancakes shaped like butterflies because it makes her giggle. I love how you research every school field trip location so you can help her with the educational components." Jonathan leaned into her touch, marveling at how right this felt. "I love how you push yourself to do things that challenge you," Gabriella continued. "Like when you insisted on coming to Sophia's school play even though it meant navigating crowds and unfamiliar spaces. I love how you never let your limitations become excuses, but you also don't pretend they don't exist. I love how you make me want to be better," Jonathan said. "Not different, not fixed, but better. The best version of who I am." They were leaning closer to each other, the summer air warm around them, the city sounds a gentle backdrop to their conversation. "What does this mean for us?" Gabriella asked. "For our family? I think it means we stop pretending that what we have is just convenient," Jonathan replied. "I think it means we acknowledge that we're building something real and permanent and beautiful." "And Sophia?" Jonathan smiled. "Sophia has been asking me for weeks when I'm going to marry you and make it official." Gabriella laughed. "She's asked me the same thing. She's very concerned about the proper order of family relationships." "Smart girl. She gets that from her mother." "Jonathan," Gabriella said, her voice becoming more serious. "I need you to know that if we do this, if we commit to being together romantically as well as family-wise, I'm all in. I don't do things halfway, especially when it comes to Sophia's stability." "I wouldn't want you to do things halfway," Jonathan replied. "Gabriella, I've spent 3 years thinking my life was over. Meeting you and Sophia didn't just give me back my life, it gave me a better life than I ever had before. I want to wake up every morning knowing that you're the first person I'll see. I want to help Sophia with homework until she goes to college, and then I want to embarrass her by crying too much at her graduation. You want the whole domestic dream? Gabriella asked with a smile. I want breakfast conversations and bedtime stories and parent-teacher conferences and family vacations and all the beautiful, ordinary moments that make up a life together. Gabriella cupped his face in her hands. Are you proposing to me, Jonathan Mitchell? Not yet, Jonathan said, his eyes twinkling. When I propose to you, it's going to be special. Something worthy of the amazing woman who saved my life and taught me how to love again. I'm looking forward to it, Gabriella said, and leaned down to kiss him properly. This kiss was different from their first tentative one in the garden. This kiss was full of promise and passion and the recognition that they'd found something extraordinary. When they broke apart, both were breathless. We should probably talk to Sophia about this, Gabriella said practically. Already covered, Jonathan grinned. I asked her last week how she'd feel if I asked you to marry me. What did she say? She said, and I quote, "It's about time, Mr. Jonathan. I was starting to think you needed glasses because anyone can see that mommy loves you and you love her." Gabriella burst into laughter. That sounds exactly like something she'd say. She also said she wants to be the flower girl, and she has very specific ideas about the color scheme for the wedding. Of course she does. As they sat together on the terrace, Gabriella still perched on the arm of Jonathan's wheelchair, his arm around her waist, they both felt the rightness of this moment. The sun was climbing higher in the summer sky, the city was waking up around them, and they were no longer three separate people who'd found each other by accident. They were a family by choice, by love, by the thousand small decisions to care for each other that had brought them to this moment. So what now? Gabriella asked. Now we enjoy being in love, Jonathan said. We take our time, we do this right, and we build the kind of marriage that Sophia can be proud to be part of. I love that plan, Gabriella said, and sealed it with another kiss that tasted like coffee in summer mornings and the promise of forever. September had painted the city in shades of gold and amber, and Sophia was thriving in 4th grade at her private school. She'd made a best friend named Emma who shared her love of art, and she'd started taking violin lessons after school, something she dreamed about but never thought possible in their old life. Jonathan had been acting mysterious for weeks, disappearing for private phone calls and having hushed conversations with building staff. Sophia had noticed too, approaching Gabriella one afternoon with 8-year-old directness. Mommy, I think Mr. Jonathan is planning something big, she announced, settling at the kitchen counter to do homework while Gabriella prepared dinner. What makes you think that, mi amor? Well, he's been asking me weird questions. Like what my favorite flowers are and what kind of music I like and whether I think you look better in blue or green. And yesterday I caught him looking at rings on his computer. Gabriella felt her heart skip a beat. Rings? Engagement rings? Sophia said matter-of-factly. I wasn't spying, but I needed help with my math homework and his computer was right there. They were really pretty rings, Mommy. Sparkly. That evening, after Sophia was asleep, Gabriella found Jonathan in his home office, staring pensively at his computer screen. Working late? She asked, settling into the chair across from his desk. Jonathan quickly minimized his browser windows. Just research. Research for what? Gabriella, Jonathan said, his voice slightly nervous. How do you feel about surprises? I like them as long as they're good surprises. Why? And how do you feel about public declarations of love? Gabriella smiled. Are you planning something, Jonathan Mitchell? Maybe, he admitted. Would that be okay? As long as Sophia approves of whatever you're planning, then yes, it would be very okay. Jonathan's face relaxed into a smile. Sophia has been my consultant on this project for 3 weeks now. She has very strong opinions about everything from flowers to music to timing. Of course she does. 2 weeks later, on a crisp October Saturday, Jonathan announced that they were having a special dinner on the penthouse terrace. He'd been mysterious about the details, only insisting that Gabriella wear the blue dress he'd bought her for her birthday and that Sophia wear her favorite purple dress with the sparkly shoes. As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the city, Gabriella and Sophia stepped onto the terrace to find it transformed. Tiny lights were strung along the railings, casting everything in a warm, magical glow. The outdoor dining table had been set with fine china and crystal, and the space was filled with Gabriella's favorite flowers, white roses and purple irises. Mr. Jonathan, this is beautiful, Sophia exclaimed, spinning around to take in all the decorations. Jonathan was waiting by the table, wearing a navy suit that made him look distinguished and nervous in equal measure. I'm glad you approve, sweetheart, You helped plan most of it. Soft jazz music played from hidden speakers, and as they sat down to dinner prepared by Jonathan's chef but served by Jonathan himself, Gabriella marveled at the perfection of the evening. The food was delicious, the conversation was easy, and Sophia kept giggling with excitement about something she clearly knew was coming. "Okay, I can't wait anymore," Sophia announced as they finished dessert. "Mr. Jonathan, can you do the thing now? Please? I've been keeping this secret forever and I'm going to explode." Jonathan laughed, his nervousness mixing with amusement. "Sophia, you've kept the secret for exactly 2 weeks. That's forever in kid time." Sophia protested. "Mommy, Mr. Jonathan has something really important to ask you." Gabriella looked between her daughter's excited face and Jonathan's tender expression, her heart beginning to race. "Does he now?" Jonathan took a deep breath and wheeled his chair back from the table. "Gabriella, 6 months ago, I was a bitter, lonely man who'd convinced himself that his life was over. I'd pushed away everyone who cared about me, and I was sitting in this penthouse counting down days until I died." "Jonathan," Gabriella whispered. "Then a little girl pressed my doorbell and asked if she could join my birthday party. And her beautiful, kind, strong mother apologized for the intrusion while teaching me that the best gifts in life come from the most unexpected places." Sophia was practically vibrating with excitement in her chair. "You didn't just save my life, Gabriella. You gave me a life worth living. You showed me that love isn't something you earn through achievement or success, it's something you give and receive through kindness, through showing up, through choosing each other every single day." Jonathan reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Gabriella gasped, her hands flying to cover her mouth. "Sophia," Jonathan said, turning to include the little girl in the moment, "you know I love you like my own daughter, right?" "Right?" Sophia nodded enthusiastically. "And you know that I want to be your daddy officially, legally, forever? Right? Well, to do that properly, I need to ask your mama a very important question first." Jonathan turned back to Gabriella, his green eyes bright with love and hope. "Gabriella Rodriguez, will you marry me? Will you let me love you and Sophia for the rest of my life? Will you be my wife, my partner, my family?" He opened the box to reveal a stunning ring, a classic solitaire diamond surrounded by smaller stones that caught the light from the fairy lights strung around the terrace. Gabriella stared at the ring, then at Jonathan's hopeful face, then at Sophia, who was clapping her hands silently to contain her excitement. "It's perfect," Gabriella whispered. "Jonathan, yes. Yes, of course I'll marry you." Sophia let out a shriek of joy and launched herself at both of them, wrapping her arms around them in a group hug that nearly knocked Jonathan out of his wheelchair. "We're going to be a real family," Sophia exclaimed. "With marriage certificates and everything." Jonathan slipped the ring onto Gabriella's finger with trembling hands. It fit perfectly, sparkling in the evening light like a promise made manifest. "How did you know my ring size?" Gabriella asked, admiring the way it looked on her hand. "Sophia traced your hand while you were sleeping," Jonathan admitted. "She's been my secret agent in this operation." "I was very sneaky," Sophia said proudly. "And Mr. Jonathan let me help pick out the ring. I told him you'd like something classic but not too fancy because you're practical but also romantic." "You know me very well, both of you," Gabriella said, tears streaming down her cheeks. "There's one more thing," Jonathan said, reaching into his other pocket. "Sophia, this is for you." He pulled out a smaller box and handed it to the little girl. Inside was a delicate gold locket shaped like a heart. "Open it," Jonathan instructed. Sophia carefully opened the locket to find a photo of the three of them from their family portrait session, all of them laughing at something Sophia had said to the photographer. "It's so you'll always have our family close to your heart," Jonathan explained. "And Sophia, I want you to know that when your mama and I get married, I want to adopt you officially. I want to be your legal father, not just in our hearts but on paper too. Would that be okay with you?" Sophia threw her arms around Jonathan's neck. "I've been waiting my whole life for a daddy like you, Mr. Jonathan. Of course it's okay." As they sat together on the terrace, surrounded by flowers and fairy lights, with the city twinkling below them, they felt the completion of a journey that had started with loneliness and led them to love. "When should we get married?" Gabriella asked, still admiring her ring. "Tomorrow," Sophia suggested. "Or maybe next week. I need time to plan my flower girl dress." "How about spring?" Jonathan suggested. "That gives us time to plan something beautiful, and it will be exactly 1 year since we first became a family." "Spring sounds perfect," Gabriella agreed. "Plenty of time for Sophia to design the perfect flower girl dress and for us to plan a celebration that feels right for our family." Can we have the wedding here? Sophia asked. On the terrace where Mr. Jonathan asked you to marry him? Jonathan and Gabriella looked around at the space that had become so meaningful to their family, the place where they'd shared breakfast conversations, evening dinners, and now this perfect proposal. I can't think of anywhere more perfect, Jonathan said. As the evening wound down and they moved inside to call Gabriella's family with the news, Sophia skipped ahead of them, talking excitedly about wedding plans and adoption papers and all the wonderful changes coming to their lives. Are you happy? Jonathan asked Gabriella as they followed their excited daughter. I'm more than happy, Gabriella replied, taking his hand. I'm complete. We all are. Mrs. Mitchell has a nice ring to it, Jonathan said with a smile. Sophia Mitchell does too, Gabriella replied. She's going to be over the moon when that adoption is finalized. We're really doing this, Jonathan said wonderingly. We're really building the family we all dreamed of. We already built it, Gabriella corrected. Now we're just making it official. As they joined Sophia in the living room to start making phone calls and sharing their joy with the world, the penthouse felt more alive than it ever had. It was no longer a beautiful but empty space. It was a home filled with love, laughter, and the promise of forever. The months between engagement and wedding passed in a whirlwind of happy planning. Sophia threw herself into wedding preparations with the enthusiasm of a professional event planner, creating elaborate sketches of flower arrangements, cake designs, and her own flower girl ensemble. Mommy, I think we need at least 3 different kinds of flowers, Sophia announced one Saturday morning, spreading her latest drawings across the kitchen counter. White roses for purity, purple irises for wisdom, and yellow daisies for happiness. That sounds beautiful, mi amor, Gabriella replied, flipping pancakes while Jonathan sat nearby, reviewing legal documents for Sophia's adoption proceedings. What about colors for the decorations? Well, your dress should be white obviously, but I think we should have gold and purple accents because those are royal colors and this is like our family becoming a kingdom. Jonathan looked up from his papers, smiling at Sophia's logic. A kingdom? Sure. You're like a prince with your castle in the sky, Sophia gestured around the penthouse, and Mommy is like a princess because she's beautiful and kind, and I'm like, well, I guess I'm like a princess too because I'm going to be your daughter. You're absolutely a princess, Jonathan agreed solemnly. The most important princess in the kingdom. Over the winter months, their relationships had deepened and settled into comfortable rhythms. Jonathan had officially adopted Sophia in February, a day that Sophia declared the second best day of her life, after the engagement. The courthouse ceremony had been small but meaningful, with Sophia wearing her best dress and carrying a bouquet of flowers she'd picked herself. Sophia Mitchell, she'd practiced saying her new name for weeks afterward, writing it on her school papers and introducing herself to new people with obvious pride. The name change had been important to all of them, but especially to Sophia, who now felt the security of belonging that she'd craved her entire 9 years of life. I have 2 parents now, she told her friend Emma at school. A mama and a daddy who chose each other and chose me too. Meanwhile, Gabriella had fully stepped into her role as Jonathan's business partner as well as his fiancée. Her insights into his consulting work had proven invaluable, and she'd started attending client meetings with him, offering perspectives that complemented his technical expertise. You know, Jonathan said one evening as they reviewed proposals for a new children's charity initiative, I think we should make this official too. Partner at Mitchell Consulting, not just assistant. Gabriella looked up from the spreadsheet she was analyzing. Jonathan, I don't have an MBA or years of corporate experience. You have something better, Jonathan interrupted. You have clarity, intuition, and the ability to see solutions I miss. Plus, our clients love working with you. They love working with us, Gabriella corrected. We're a team. Exactly. So let's make the team official. These conversations about their professional partnership were woven throughout their wedding planning, as they realized they were building not just a marriage but a complete life together. Jonathan had the penthouse renovated to better accommodate their growing family, adding a proper office space for Gabriella and expanding Sophia's room to include an art studio where she could pursue her increasingly sophisticated artistic interests. Mr. Jonathan, Sophia said one afternoon while working on a painting in her new studio, are you nervous about getting married? Jonathan, who was helping her mix colors, considered the question seriously. Not nervous exactly. Excited maybe? Why do you ask? Well, some kids at school said their parents got divorced because marriage is hard work. Is our family going to stay together even when things get hard? Jonathan set down his brush and gave Sophia his full attention. This was the kind of conversation that mattered more than any business deal he'd ever negotiated. Sophia, every family faces hard times sometimes. That's normal and natural. But your mama and I are committed to working through problems together instead of giving up when things get difficult. How do you know you'll be able to do that? Because we've already done it, Jonathan replied. When I was sad and angry after my accident, your mama didn't give up on me. When you and your mama were struggling financially, you didn't give up on each other. We've all learned that love means staying and working together, even when it's not easy. Sophia nodded thoughtfully. So marriage is like making a promise to keep being a family even when someone is having a bad day? That's exactly what it is, Jonathan agreed. A promise to choose each other every day through good days and bad days. Then I think you and Mommy will be really good at being married, Sophia concluded, returning to her painting with the matter settled in her mind. As spring approached and their wedding day drew near, all three of them felt the excitement of new beginnings mixed with the contentment of relationships that had already proven themselves strong and true. Gabriella's family flew in from California for the wedding, and Jonathan was nervous about meeting them until Sophia took charge of introductions with characteristic confidence. Abuela Maria, this is my daddy Jonathan. Sophia announced, pulling her grandmother over to meet Jonathan. Daddy, this is Abuela. She makes the best tamales in the world and she taught Mommy how to be strong. Maria Rodriguez took one look at Jonathan's obvious adoration of Sophia and Gabriella, and any reservations she might have had melted away. So you're the man who stole my daughter's heart, she said, embracing Jonathan warmly. Actually, I think Sophia stole my heart first, and your daughter was just part of the package deal, Jonathan replied with a smile. Smart man, Maria laughed. Sophia has always been irresistible. The week before the wedding, as final preparations were being made and out-of-town guests were arriving, Sophia made an announcement at dinner that surprised both adults. I wrote something for the wedding, she said, pulling a folded piece of paper from her pocket. It's not exactly a speech, but I wanted to read something during the ceremony about our family. Gabriella and Jonathan exchanged glances. What kind of something? Gabriella asked gently. Well, I know that usually flower girls just walk down the aisle and look pretty, but I thought maybe I could also tell everyone about how we all found each other and became a family. Is that okay? Jonathan felt tears prick his eyes. Sophia, I would be honored to hear what you've written. Can I practice it on you guys? Of course, sweetheart. Sophia unfolded her paper and cleared her throat importantly. This is called, How My Family Found Each Other. She began to read in her clear, confident voice. Once upon a time, there was a very smart man who lived in a castle in the clouds, but he was very sad because he thought he was all alone. And there was a brave mama and her little girl who worked very hard but dreamed of having a daddy who would love them both. One night, the little girl saw the sad man having a birthday party all by himself, and she asked if they could join him. And that's how love found all of us, because sometimes the best families are the ones you choose, not the ones you're born with. Both Gabriella and Jonathan were crying by the time Sophia finished reading. Is it good? Sophia asked anxiously. Should I change anything? It's perfect, Jonathan said, his voice thick with emotion. Absolutely perfect. Can I really read it at the wedding? I insist that you read it at the wedding, Gabriella said, pulling Sophia into a hug. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. As they sat together that evening, 1 week away from officially becoming husband and wife, parents and daughter, they marveled at the journey that had brought them to this moment. From loneliness and struggle to love and security, from 3 separate people to one unshakable family unit. Are you ready for this? Gabriella asked Jonathan as they tucked Sophia into bed. I've been ready since the night a little girl asked if she could join my birthday party, Jonathan replied. I just didn't know it yet. As they prepared for what Sophia had declared would be the best day of their lives, all 3 of them felt the deep satisfaction of knowing that their love story was just beginning, built on the solid foundation of choosing each other every single day. The morning of April 15th dawned clear and bright, with the kind of spring sunshine that made everything feel possible. Sophia was awake before anyone else, too excited to sleep, and had already laid out her flower girl dress and practiced her wedding reading 3 more times before Gabriella and Jonathan were fully awake. It's wedding day, Sophia announced, bouncing into their bedroom at 6 a.m. The most important day in the history of our family. Jonathan sat up in bed, his hair disheveled but his smile bright. Good morning, princess. Are you ready to help me marry your mama? I've been ready forever, Sophia declared. But first I made you both something. She handed them each a small wrapped package. Inside Gabriella's was a painting Sophia had been working on secretly for weeks, a portrait of their family on the terrace, with the city skyline behind them and the words "Forever and Always" written in Sophia's careful handwriting at the bottom. Jonathan's gift was similar but different, a drawing of him pushing Sophia on the swing he'd had installed in a small corner of the terrace, with Gabriella watching from nearby. At the bottom Sophia had written, "The best daddy in the world." "Sophia, these are incredible," Gabriella whispered, tears already starting. "When did you have time to make these?" "I worked on them during art time at school and when you guys were having your boring grown-up meetings," Sophia explained. "Mrs. Patterson helped me with the frames." The morning passed in a blur of preparations. Gabriella's sister Carmen had arrived to help with hair and makeup, while Jonathan's sister Rebecca, who had flown in from Seattle and was slowly rebuilding her relationship with her brother, helped coordinate the vendors and decorations. "I can't believe how beautiful this is," Rebecca said, surveying the terrace that had been transformed into a wedding wonderland. White roses and purple irises covered every surface, exactly as Sophia had envisioned. Golden fairy lights were woven through the flower arrangements, and the altar area faced the city skyline that had become so meaningful to their family. "Sophia designed most of it," Jonathan explained, wheeling over to check the arrangement of chairs. "She has very specific ideas about what constitutes proper wedding ambience. She gets that attention to detail from her mother," Rebecca observed, watching Gabriella direct the placement of the wedding cake, a three-tier masterpiece decorated with sugar flowers that matched the real ones. "Actually, I think she gets it from both her parents now," Jonathan said softly. "She's the perfect combination of Gabriella's artistic sensibility and my need for everything to be perfectly organized." As the afternoon approached and guests began to arrive, the penthouse filled with the warm energy of celebration. Gabriella's family had come from California, a few of Jonathan's business associates had been invited, and Sophia's teacher and best friend Emma were there to witness her big moment as flower girl. "You know," said Patricia, Jonathan's longtime assistant who had watched his transformation with amazement, "I never thought I'd see you this happy again. That little girl and her mother worked a miracle." "We all worked a miracle," Jonathan corrected. "We chose to love each other and that choice changed everything." At 4 o'clock, as the ceremony was about to begin, Sophia made one final check of her appearance in the mirror. Her purple dress was perfect, her flower crown sat just right, and her basket of rose petals was ready for scattering. "I look like a real princess," she announced with satisfaction. "You look like Sophia," Gabriella said, adjusting her own dress, a simple but elegant white gown that made her look radiant. "And Sophia is better than any princess." The ceremony began with Sophia walking down the short aisle, scattering rose petals with serious concentration and beaming at all the guests. When she reached the altar area, she took her place next to the officiant and waited for her parents. Gabriella walked alone, having chosen to give herself away since this marriage was her own choice, made in complete freedom and joy. When she reached Jonathan, who looked distinguished and handsome in his dark suit, she took his hands and felt the rightness of this moment settle into her bones. "Dearly beloved," the officiant began, "we are gathered here today to witness the marriage of Jonathan and Gabriella, and to celebrate the family they have already built through love, choice, and commitment." The ceremony was perfect in its simplicity. Jonathan and Gabriella exchanged vows they had written themselves, promising to love, support, and choose each other through all of life's seasons. They spoke about the journey that had brought them together, about the healing they had found in each other, and about their commitment to raising Sophia in a home filled with love and possibility. When it came time for Sophia's reading, she stepped forward with confidence and read her story about how their family found each other. There wasn't a dry eye in the gathering as she spoke about love that chooses and families that form through kindness rather than blood. "And now they're getting married, so it's official," Sophia concluded, "but we already knew we were a family because families are people who love each other every day no matter what." The kiss that sealed their marriage was sweet and full of promise, witnessed by their daughter who clapped enthusiastically and shouted, "Now we're the Mitchell family forever." The reception continued on the terrace as the sun set over the city, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. There was dancing, Jonathan's wheelchair proving no obstacle to spinning Sophia around the small dance floor they'd created, in toasts and cake, and the kind of joy that comes from dreams fulfilled and love celebrated. "What's the best part of today?" Gabriella asked Sophia as the evening wound down and guests began to leave. "All of it," Sophia replied. "But especially the part where you and Daddy promised to love each other forever, because that means our family is permanent now." "It was always permanent, sweetheart," Jonathan said, lifting Sophia onto his lap. "The wedding just made it official for everyone else." As they sat together watching the last of the city lights twinkle to life, Sophia curled up between her parents. All three of them felt the profound contentment of a story that had reached its perfect ending and perfect beginning simultaneously. "What do you think happens next?" Sophia asked sleepily. "Everything wonderful," Gabriella replied, taking Jonathan's hand. "School years and birthdays and holidays and all the beautiful ordinary days that make up a life together." "Will we always be this happy?" Sophia asked. Jonathan considered the question seriously. "We'll have challenges and sad days sometimes, princess. But we'll face them together as a family. And yes, I think we'll always have this happiness underneath everything else, because we'll always have each other." Sophia nodded, satisfied with this answer, and drifted off to sleep in the safety of her parents' love. Later that night, after Sophia had been tucked into her own bed and the terrace had been cleared of decorations, Jonathan and Gabriella sat together in the quiet of their home, married now, officially and completely a family. "Any regrets?" Jonathan asked, twirling Gabriella's wedding ring around her finger. "Only that we didn't find each other sooner," Gabriella replied. "But then again, maybe we all needed to become the people we are now before we could recognize each other." "You mean we needed to be ready for this kind of love?" "Exactly. Sophia needed to be old enough to appreciate having a father who chose her. I needed to be strong enough to believe I deserved this kind of partnership. And you needed to be ready to let people love you again." Jonathan nodded, understanding the wisdom in her words. "Everything in its right time." "Everything in its right time," Gabriella agreed. As they prepared for bed on their wedding night, both of them marveled at the journey that had brought them to this moment. A year ago, Jonathan had been alone with an untouched birthday cake. A year ago, Gabriella had been working multiple jobs and worrying about Sophia's future. A year ago, Sophia had been wishing for a father who would love her and stay. Now they were a family, legal and official and permanent, built on the foundation of a little girl's innocent kindness and two adults' willingness to open their hearts to unexpected love. "Do you know what I'm most looking forward to?" Jonathan asked as they settled into bed together. "What's that?" "Tomorrow morning. Waking up as your husband, making breakfast with Sophia, starting our first day as the Mitchell family." "I love that," Gabriella said, snuggling close to her new husband. "I love all the tomorrows we have ahead of us." The next morning did indeed dawn bright and beautiful, and Sophia was the first one awake again, ready to begin their new life as an officially married family. They made pancakes shaped like wedding bells, and Sophia regaled them with detailed analysis of every moment of the wedding ceremony. The cake was perfect, the flowers were perfect, Mommy's dress was perfect, and Daddy looked very handsome, she announced. "It was the best wedding ever." "I'm glad it met with your approval," Jonathan said solemnly. "Since you were the wedding planner." "I was the best wedding planner," Sophia agreed with characteristic confidence. "Can we have another party next year for your first anniversary?" "We'll see," Gabriella laughed. "But first let's enjoy being newlyweds." As they ate breakfast on the terrace where they'd been married less than 12 hours before, the city awakening below them, all three of them felt the deep satisfaction of a story completed and a new chapter begun. 6 months later, as they sat around the same table celebrating Jonathan's 56th birthday, this time with no lonely candles, no empty chairs, no silence, Sophia made an announcement that surprised both adults. "I have a birthday present for Daddy," she said, pulling out a wrapped package. "But it's really for all of us." Inside was a photo album Sophia had been working on with Gabriella's help. It chronicled their journey from that first night when a little girl asked to join a lonely man's birthday party through their wedding day and the months since. The last page had a photo from that morning's birthday celebration, all three of them laughing at something Sophia had said, looking exactly like the happy family they'd become. "Thank you, Princess," Jonathan said, his voice thick with emotion. "This is the most beautiful present I've ever received." "Look at the last page," Sophia instructed. Jonathan turned to the final page and found a note in Sophia's careful handwriting. "Thank you for being the best daddy in the world and for making Mommy happy and for showing me that families can begin in the most wonderful ways. Happy birthday to the man who made all our dreams come true. Love, Sophia Mitchell, your daughter forever and always." As Jonathan read the note aloud, all three of them cried happy tears, remembering how far they'd traveled from that first lonely birthday to this celebration filled with love, laughter, and the unshakable knowledge that they belonged to each other completely. The story that had begun with loneliness and a child's simple kindness had become a love story for the ages, not because it was dramatic or extraordinary in its events, but because it was built on the most powerful foundation of all, the choice to love each other, every day no matter what. And in the final surprise that made their joy complete, Gabriella revealed that she was expecting a baby, a little brother or sister for Sophia, a child who would grow up knowing nothing but the security of parents who chose love over fear, hope over despair, and family over everything else. "Now we're going to be 4. Sophia exclaimed, already making plans for the nursery and composing welcome songs for the new baby. "This is the best birthday present ever." As they celebrated this newest chapter in their love story, the Mitchell family sat together on their terrace above the city, surrounded by everything they'd built through courage, kindness, and the simple decision to let love transform their lives. Their story had begun with a birthday wish and a child's invitation to join a lonely celebration. It had become a testament to the truth that families are built not just through blood, but through the daily choice to show up for each other with open hearts and unwavering commitment. And as the sun set over New York City on Jonathan's best birthday yet, 3 hearts beat in perfect rhythm, joined by the tiny new heartbeat of the child they would welcome together, knowing that their love story was still being written, one beautiful day at a time. Dear wonderful listeners, what touched your heart most about Jonathan, Gabriella, and Sophia's journey? Have you ever experienced a moment when a simple act of kindness changed everything? What do you think makes a real family? Is it blood, or is it the daily choice to love and support each other? I'd love to hear your thoughts about love, family, and second chances in the comments below.